Of May 28th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Tom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kristen, does the red on the owl mean that it's muted?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. There we go.
Yep.
Thank you.
So first we have the open forum. And the first item is to recognize Westford Public Health Nurse Gail Johnson, who received the Sheila Miller Memorial Public Health Nurse Award at the Massachusetts Association for Public Health Nursing Conference was that last week, I think?
It was a few weeks ago, I believe, yes.
So congratulations, Gail, and thank you for your work for Westford. Secondly, I'd like to recognize Nancy Botet, who's retiring from the J.V. Fletcher Library after 14 years of service. I believe we've got Ellen on the line to...
I just promoted her, yes.
I think fittingly, we gave us the option to attend, and she preferred to work tonight. So that's about the select board and her opinion of us, or her work to devotion to the town. So,
Ellen, are you all set?
I am. I'm sorry. Yes. So we're celebrating Nancy, the head of youth services. She's brought joy, fun, breakout collections, and superlative programs to the children of Westford for over 14 years. Whether she's been creating award-winning entries for the Festival of Trees or winning the coveted Roden Bowl 8 times for her Apple Blossom Parade entry, her creativity and inspiration has spread across all of Westford and was unsurpassed during our COVID lockdown. If you've witnessed the library staff marching down Main Street as minions, as Legos, wearing inflatable dinosaur costumes, doing Quidditch and potions, or headed to Oz with Dorothy, the Wizard, the Wicked Witch, the Toto, and the Tornado, you've seen Nancy's creative visions for the children of Westford. So we wish her a wonderful, bountiful retirement, and you can join us in saying goodbye to her on Friday, May 31st from 1:30 to 3:45. We'll have Mr. Bubble Guy, a drop-in craft, a take-home party favor, and refreshments.
great. Thanks, and thank you, Nancy. Next, we have an announcement that we'll have our first Juneteenth flag-raising event and celebration. That'll be held on, surprisingly, Wednesday, June 19th at 9 a.m. on the Town Common. Be there and show your support for the first annual event. There will be many more. And then secondly, an update on the trash recycling open forum events. Give you some dates. On June 4th at 7 o'clock, be a hybrid public forum at the Millennium School. If you can't make that, June 7th, there'll be a Zoom Lunch and Learn at noontime. And thirdly, at the Cameron Senior Center, there'll be a luncheon on June 18th at also noon. So 3 chances to learn about the next year's trash recycling, and more coming in the mail and webcasts and so forth, but those are our scheduled events. Anything else open forum from the board? Anyone from the audience? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Come on, sorry.
I'm Beth Perkins from 9 Patriot Lane, and also a member of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee. First of all, I know that members of the town staff and the select board worked very hard to fight for the override for our budget here in town, and I thank everyone for that. But now that the override has failed, we have challenges ahead of us that are going to require significant collaboration. So I'm here tonight because the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee is asking town management and the board to explore all possible ways of continuing funding for the sustainability coordinator position here in town. So we've identified, or numerous projects have been identified that will increase energy efficiency, provide solar power on our roofs, electrify our fleet of vehicles, and significant state and federal funding continues to be available for these projects. We've been making big progress pursuing these efforts, and I think many of you are aware of that. But we're very concerned that momentum is going to be lost if we lose this position. We think that's a big mistake from a climate standpoint, but really importantly from a budget standpoint also, because increasing energy efficiency, reducing waste, and generating renewable energy throughout our town and school, I mean, these are the things we should be doing, and we should be making sure we're taking advantage of every state and federal dollar to do those things. So I just want to say that we're looking forward to working with you to explore every avenue of funding for this position. And Mike Berlinski wrote up a letter that I believe is in your packet. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim O'Connell, 9 Misty Lane, and I'm co-chair of the Westford Climate Action. I have a similar message to what Beth was saying, but I thought I'd read it anyway. So Westford Climate Action is deeply concerned about the loss of the Sustainability Coordinator position and what effect that will have on the town of Westford. Since its creation, the position has been a driving force in obtaining federal, state, and utility incentives. Having the sustainability coordinator has helped us get grants and incentives and achieve a state-recognized status that unlocks additional funds. Who will do this work now? Significant energy-saving opportunities, solar projects, and fleet electrification programs have been identified in our municipal buildings and departments. Who will track these projects and ensure that we maximize state and federal funding? How will we implement Westford's net zero climate roadmap going forward? Can we afford to lose this momentum? We believe the sustainability coordinator position more than pays for itself, and we respectfully urge you to find a way to fund this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So one late arrival that, if you heard the ping, it was not me being rude, actually was a legitimate request. 30-year anniversary of the Cameron Senior Center will be celebrated on June 12th. From 1:30 to 3:30. It'll be caricature drawings. I will not go for that. Tours, door prizes, and more. Please RSVP for this occasion at the Senior Center, which is 978-523, 5523. Sorry, 978-692-5523. If you are mobility impaired, will be transportation available to pick you up. In which case, please call Bob Rafferty at the Senior Center, 978-399-2322. Did I get all, Patty?
That's it.
Okay.
You got it.
With that, I would move on to our 7:05 agenda item, which is the consent agenda for first, the Town Common and Bandstand. The event is the Juneteenth celebration. Applicant is the DEI committee, and that'd be June 19th at 9 to 9:40 a.m. And then secondly, a rally for reproductive freedom. Applicant is Denali Delmar of Indivisible Westford. Date is June 22nd from 10 a.m. to noontime. Is there a motion to approve both?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. 7:10, a joint meeting with the Finance Committee. I see at least one here.
A few online too.
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay, good.
promote.
So to request individual transfer of funds from the debt service account to the legal service expense account. Well, several things. Let's first, because we get all of our FinCom colleagues online and call to order.
So I think think everyone who was online has been promoted to panelist. Shinji, Beth Morrison, Hari, Heather, Christina Green are online.
So Christina, do you want to call your committee to order?
Sure, thank you. I'll call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order on May 28th, 2024. Thanks.
Thanks, and so we've got several requests here. I think probably Dan, you're the person to speak to all three.
Sure.
So I'll just let you take it away from here.
All right, so the past few years, we've been having budget transfers at the end of the fiscal year. We're allowed to do these with a majority vote from the Select Board and Finance Committee and from May 1st to July 15th. It works out really well since we have typically have a March town meeting and other unforeseen things happen at year end that we need to fund. So the first one here is a transfer from debt service to our legal services expense account in the amount of $35,000. We have reduced the legal services budget over the past few years as we haven't been utilizing them as much, but of course, a lot of things came up this year that we needed to fund, including the MBTA communities, the firearms bylaw, and there have been some legal labor costs as well. So looking at the projections, it looks like that $35,000 is a safe number to get us through the end of the year. Whatever we don't use just closes out the free cash at the end. So.
Do we need to vote on these individually,
We
Dan?
can do them all at once if
Yes.
you want.
Yes, well, do you mind, Christina, do all at once?
Yeah, all at once would be great.
Okay.
I have a question on it. Could we, I just have a question on the legal services, and depending on how that goes, I'll go along with the idea of voting for all, if it's up to you. Can I ask a question on that?
What?
I'd like to ask.
Scott, can I have him ask a
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
So I have a question for Dan. With regard to the legal services, you mentioned the part of this was involving the firearms bylaw situation. And I wanted to know, was this for work that has been done, or is it work anticipated for the future?
So, if I may answer that.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was work that was done, and therefore we cannot fund certain legal expenses that we have for the remainder of the fiscal
Okay.
year.
All right. No problems. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, on number two then, Dan.
Okay, on to number two. So this came about.
I have a question on the legal services.
Okay.
I'm looking at the spreadsheet that attached to the email, and it says the description for legal services is debt service senior center HVAC. Is that correct?
It's where the transfer is coming from. So we issued debt in the amount, or authorized debt in the amount of $1.1 million for the senior center HVAC, which we did not borrow. So that money is sitting in the debt service account that will close out at year end. So we thought it was a good place to transfer from, since it's going to close out anyways.
Okay, so this transfer is coming from debt service senior center HVAC, not from the finance committee reserve fund.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Hey, sorry.
Any other questions? Okay, now for the second one.
The second one is something that just came up last week. It's not too bad in here right now, but our chiller outside is on the fritz. Jeff Goodwin had requested that we transfer $8,000 for them to fix the controls on it. I think we worked on this last year, and we tried to do a cheaper fix. It didn't work, and so they've been out here several times in the past week as the weather's gotten warmer, and it gets up into the mid 80s upstairs when that's not working. So we do want to fix that for the summer, and we're requesting $8,000 to have somebody come in and fix that for us.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah. Okay. So how old is this unit?
It's got to go back to the
2010.
Yeah.
So almost 15 years.
Right. And the cost to replace it is roughly how much?
$8,000 for the chiller control panel.
That's just the control panel. I imagine the whole ensemble, though, is a lot more.
We don't believe we have an issue with the whole system. It's the control panel that is faulty at this point in time. We will be talking about the space analysis and the capital needs later on in this agenda, and that will be reviewed under that space analysis.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess on to the third.
Yep. So lastly, we are asking for $2,500 for the animal control expense account. Spring is a very active time of year for the animal control officers, and this year has been no exception. We've had some cases that we wrote about here involving some animal cruelty cases and some domestic disputes and whatnot, and we do have some expenses are pending for us to pay, which we can't fit within the existing budget. Our annual budget is very small, so if something unexpected comes out, we typically can't fund it out of this without asking for additional funds.
Any questions?
What's our balance?
Does have a
Yep,
question.
Beth has one, yep. Go ahead, Beth.
So I'm wondering if ARPA funding could be used for this. It says there's been an increase in mental health and substance abuse cases related that result in an intervention. And to me, that sounds, like it could be COVID related, because we have seen an increase in mental health crises as a result of COVID. So I'm wondering if ARPA was considered.
We did not consider ARPA because it's a normal operating expense for the animal control, so we thought just funding it with the transfer is the easiest way to fund this for now.
Any other questions?
One more.
Okay, Dennis?
What's the balance in the finance committee account now after this?
So this is coming from the debt service account, so it's not hitting the finance committee account. We had another emergency come up today with the IT building and their HVAC system, so we're going to the finance committee next week to ask for a reserve fund. So,
Okay.
but the current balance in the reserve fund is about $56,000, I believe.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I guess, what we'll hear from for the finance committee first, what your vote might be.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve these transfers as explained?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Dennis?
Aye.
Shinji?
Aye.
Shelby? I didn't hear you, but I saw you. Okay, thank you. Hari?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous.
Thanks. And on the board, all in favor? Raise your hand, we're all here. Okay. Thanks, so we're unanimous as well.
Be back next week.
So I guess if you want to dismiss adjourn your
Adjourn
committee?
us. Yeah, could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
And a second? All right, all in favor? Dennis?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Shinji?
Aye.
Shelby?
Aye.
Ari?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
Scott, did we need a motion? I know they had made a motion, but did we need a motion?
Well, we approved it.
You approved it, so, if we have to, what should I say is a motion to accept, so I can.
Whatever, as long as you're comfortable, I just want to.
Okay, so,
Dan,
Dan?
Dan, can you stay for ARPA?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyway, next at 7:20, almost on the dot, is a presentation from Zen City on the Westford Community Survey. I assume Rachel is out there
So-
or online?
We have two members from Zen City online. If you don't mind, I'll just tee this up
Oh, yeah.
a little bit. So as many members of the public and obviously the select board know, we are currently going through a townwide strategic planning process to understand what goals we might see for ourselves into the future and how we see ourselves in terms of a vision. We contracted with Zen City, who runs surveys, to poll the Westford community and understanding where people rank us in terms of affordable housing, economic development, affordability, in terms of their happiness to be in town, how long they think they would be in town. And Zen City has collected that data, and they'll be presenting that data this evening. We'll be using it to inform our work in terms of the strategic plan, in which the select board's going to meet next week in a workshop with Raf Tellis related to that. So I will turn that over to Zen City. You do have in your packets the initial report, but it is very high level. So Rachel and Maurice from Zen City are here to give an initial overview and then answer any questions that you may have. So are you ready for them?
Yep,
to?
yep, okay.
Great, we're ready for you to start.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Maurice Classen, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Zen City. I will just be here to kick off and introduce my colleague, who is much more the brains behind the outfit, Dr. Rachel Levenstein. But I did want to be on the call both A, to thank you for your partnership in this endeavor, and then also to avail myself of any insight after we go through the results that Dr. Lowenstein will walk through. I'm also a former city official. I was the chief of staff to the mayor of Chicago for 2.5 years, also served as the director of strategy for the election department. So I come not just with the business background, but a little bit of government. So whatever advice I can provide, I would like to be available to do that. So I just want to start off by thanking you again for your partnership. I'll take it over to Dr. Lowenstein.
Thanks, Maurice. It's nice to talk to you all tonight. I'm Rachel Levenstein. I'm the head of survey research at Zen City. I'm the methodologist on staff, so if you have any questions about the methods we use, please feel free to ask questions. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I think somebody needs to give me the ability to do so.
Use that just to have her. Yep, we're working on that, Rachel. Just one moment.
Okay.
Rachel and the 3 dots.
Yeah.
Post. All right, Rachel, you should be able to share your screen now.
Got it. Thank you. All right. So I'm here to present the first round of the Westford Community Survey, which was conducted in February through May of this year. And just for a little bit of background, the Zen City Community Survey is a recurring survey. This will be done annually for Westford, and it measures both quality of life and satisfaction with community characteristics and town services. I'm going to show you your results. I'm also going to show you how Westford compares to the U.S. as a whole and also to similar towns. We collected data from over 800 respondents using digital methods. So that means social media, mobile app ads, and survey panels. And we wanted to create a representative sample that looked like the town of Westford. So we started with Census Bureau estimates for race, gender, age, and age. So beginning with that, we targeted residents who had to try to get the right mix of these demographics, and we kept looking at the responses as they came in to see how we were doing. So this kind of quota sampling is really helpful, but it's only one piece of the representative puzzle. After the survey was completed, we used a process called rake weighting that further adjusts the estimate so that no demographic group is overrepresented or underrepresented in the final scores. I wanted to talk a little bit about the sample composition. So here what you see are 3 bars for each of our demographics. The light blue bar shows the unweighted demographics. So this is just the raw demographics of what we got. After we complete the rake weighting, that's what those dark blue bars are. And then the demographics per the Census Bureau, and keep in mind these are demographics for the 18 and over population specifically, those are in gray. So you can see that even though we did not get the 20% for the 18 and 34s after we completed the rake weighting, the estimates were pretty much on par with the population estimates. We were also very good at getting the over 55s to participate, but once we adjusted it, it kind of evened its way out. All right. Now I want to dive into the results. The overall satisfaction score is kind of our main metric for how people are feeling about life in Westford. And this satisfaction score is comprised of a number of different items, which I'm going to show you in a moment. We ask 3 questions on quality of life, and we ask a series of questions on community characteristics. So to generate the overall satisfaction score, we take the average of the quality of life scores, the average of the community characteristics scores, take the average of that together and assign it a positive, neutral, or a negative score. So what I'm going to show you is the percent who are satisfied with life in Westford. In the future, you're going to see trends on this report. You're going to see how things have gone from this year to the next year. And here what we see is that 76% of residents are satisfied with life in Westford, and nobody was dissatisfied. We had a quarter of the sample that were in this neutral area, but on the whole, people are feeling pretty good about life in Westford. And these 3 questions right here are the overall quality of life scores. So 74% of residents are satisfied with the overall quality of life. 61% said they would be likely to recommend Westford as a place to live, and 57% said they would be likely to be living in Westford 5 years from now. And when we take the average of all the community characteristics, which I will show you in a few slides, 71% were satisfied and nobody was dissatisfied. So let's break down satisfaction by demographics. And we do see some trends here. So we see that older residents are a little bit more satisfied than younger residents, 81% for the over 55s and 68% for the 18 to 34 group. We don't see many differences by education and by race and ethnicity. And so I wanted to flag here that an asterisk shows that it's a pretty small sample. So we provide the scores for reference, but please, take it with a grain of salt. It's based on 35 responses. We don't really see any differences either by income. Lower income was a little bit more satisfied, but not substantially so. Okay, so let's turn to the community characteristics. And what we've done here is we've sorted them by most satisfied to least satisfied. So I'm not going to go through each one of these in the interest of time. But I did want to flag that sense of overall safety, people are very satisfied and people feel very safe in Westford. 85% were satisfied and only 4% were dissatisfied. Access to quality education, people are really happy with the education in Westford. 77% were satisfied compared to 6% who were dissatisfied. And the overall cleanliness and maintenance of town properties and facilities. That was also an area people were pretty happy with, 72% satisfied. And when we go down to the bottom to the areas where there's some more spaces for opportunity, some more spaces for growth, we see that ease of getting around Westford without a car, 79% were dissatisfied and only 8% were satisfied. Affordable housing is, of course, a national issue. I'm going to show what that looks like at the national level and also for towns like yours. But only 11% were satisfied with the availability of affordable housing and 71% were dissatisfied. And similarly with the availability of jobs that pay a living wage. This is, again, something that cities and towns and counties around the country are really dealing with. 29% were satisfied and 33% were dissatisfied. So that was a lot. There were a lot of community characteristics in there, and I focused on kind of the top and the bottom. But what I also wanted to do was kind of focus on the areas that are related to overall satisfaction. So we pulled out a couple of characteristics, and we're going to dive in and look at the demographic characteristics for those. But we pulled out a strength area or maintain area. These are characteristics that are strongly related to overall satisfaction and have a notably high score. And then we have our focus area, which is a low scoring characteristic that has a strong relationship with overall satisfaction. So our strength area here is access to quality healthcare services. Notice this wasn't in the top 3, but it is very much related to overall satisfaction. So 67% were satisfied here, and that's an area of strength. The ability of residents to give input to the Westford government was the focus area, and that's 37% were satisfied there. So let's look at the strength. Let's look at the access to quality healthcare service and see kind of where our wins are here and where there might still be some opportunities for growth. We don't see a lot of differences, maybe a little bit by age, where younger residents were a little less satisfied than older residents, and lower income residents were less satisfied than those making at least $50,000 a year. We don't really see many differences by race and ethnicity either. Okay, and let's switch to the focus area. So this is the area that had a notably low score, but still was strongly related to overall satisfaction. 37% of residents were satisfied with the ability to give input to the Westford government. And we don't see a ton of differences here. We do see some differences by race and ethnicity, where Asian residents were more satisfied. Again, I want to flag this asterisk that we had a small sample size there. So, it's interesting, but but keep in mind that there might be some variation under there. I also want to flag that the 18 to 34-year-old residents found it easier. They were more satisfied with the ability to give input to the government. Okay, So let's talk about the benchmark and what we did here. So Zen City conducts a national benchmark survey twice a year. The last time we did this was in the first quarter of this year, so February and March. We collected data from about 6,000 residents across the country and over 1,000 communities. We created national scores from this data, but we also wanted to create scores for what we call a cohort. And these are towns similar to Westford based on demographics. We used a process called principal components analysis and cluster analysis to generate kind of groups of cities, groups of towns, groups of counties that are similar on these characteristics. And then we created a cohort score based on that. So we didn't go out and survey specific towns that we thought were like Westford. We collected data from the US as a whole, and then grouped that data together for the cohort. We also adjusted the estimates for the national and the cohort scores so that it would look like Westford. So we didn't want to be comparing Westford to the US as a whole, which demographically looks very different, or for the cohorts. So what I'm showing here are the results for Westford, for the cohort, and for the national score. For quality of life. So for the overall quality of life, Westford was right on par with the cohort and a little bit higher than the national score. In terms of likelihood to recommend Westford as a place to live, it was on par with the national score, but a little bit lower than the cohort. And then likelihood to be living in Westford 5 years from now was a little bit lower than both the cohort and the national score. When we look at community characteristics, there were a few things that jumped out here. So again, blue dot is Westford, the triangle is the national score, and the square is the cohort score. And you can see that availability of affordable housing is low nationwide and is low across the cohort. We're about 29% of residents were satisfied with that. But in Westford, it's 11%. So you can see that this is an opportunity for growth. This is an area where people are really struggling. When it comes to the sense of community, this is about on par with the U.S. as a whole and a little bit lower. But the good, there are some really positive things here as well in terms of access to quality of education. The Westford score for quality of education is 77%, and the cohort was 66%. And it was much higher also than the national score of 58%. And the sense of overall safety, of course, 85% were satisfied compared to 69% in the cohort and 59% for the US as a whole. Okay. We asked a couple open-ended questions. What's your favorite thing about living in Westford? And what is the one thing you'd want to have changed in Westford? And I think what people are really liking are the schools, but interestingly, they also flagged that in the things that they want changed. But taxes came up a good bit for what you would like to have changed. I also want to flag that on our dashboard, you can see all of the open-ended responses, and you can see them tagged according to our AI.
And we're going to be working with Raftelis on that. They have access to the dashboard. Mike and I also have access to the dashboard, so we can pull some additional data from that.
Yeah, that's one question. I went to the end for most of it, but I'm curious. When I look at most of these metrics, they're Westford dependent, right? Schools, trash pickup, so forth. But availability of jobs that pay a living wage, most folks that live in Westford don't work in Westford. So how wide a net are you casting with that job, I guess, envelope? Are you looking at only Westford jobs, or are you looking at jobs in Massachusetts, Greater Boston? What's that geographic area?
We keep it a little open-ended. So we just ask, is the availability of jobs that pay a living wage? How satisfied are you with that? Maurice, I don't know if you want to add anything here about the interpretation.
Yeah, the way that we phrase the question leads it to be jobs within the region, in other words, ways in which jobs connected to your sort of your proximity to that space. So I think In other words, would you, the kind of the inference there is, would you move if you did not have that availability for jobs? So I think in that way, it's kind of a much more general, open-ended question, so it wouldn't be specific to the job actually within Westford.
Okay, I mean, I guess it occurs to me that if you were to give a survey and say Chelmsford, next 10 over, most of those issues would be different because it's a different town, but the job would be basically the same because we're all commuting someplace out of town to work, or not all, but most of us. Okay, that's
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to, while we're on this moment, just a moment there, Rachel, I just want to mention the cohort cities for which you guys are compared to our 8 cities within Massachusetts with similar size. We can provide those names if you'd like, and so that's the group in which you are compared to.
That would
There were other cities though as well in that group.
Right.
Okay. The last part of this presentation will go into our rotating survey questions. We also call them our bonus questions. These are questions that were developed separate from our main community survey. The first question was about satisfaction with overall quality of customer service from town employees. 66% of residents were satisfied. And it was a little bit lower for younger residents compared to older residents, and also for lower income residents compared to those making $50,000 or more. In terms of our second question, how would you prefer to receive news and information from Westford? This was a select all that apply question, which is why it certainly does not add up to 100%. Most respondents flagged social media. But I do want to mention that most of our respondents were actually sourced from social media ads. So if you are taking the survey on social media, you're much more likely to prefer to receive news and information from social media. And 49% said that they would prefer to receive news and information via email. Okay, so the rest of the report is the questionnaire text, just for your reference. I'm happy to take any questions about the methods, about the findings, but that takes us to the end of the presentation.
I've got one question I'll give the rest of the board, but I guess I look at the responses and I see 35 responses from the Asian community, and that gets an asterisk because it's too small. I look at the demographic 18 to 34 and I see 60 responses, which seems to be pretty weak compared to the 458 from the 55 and over. So I know you've got weights that you're applying, but I guess, should we feel as confident about that 18 to 34 as you're suggesting, or is that sort of at the edge of significance mathematically?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that question.
So is that 60 significant in a mathematical sense, or is it at the edge of significance?
Yeah, so, I would say below 50, things get a little bit variable. Above 50 is better. Above 100 is even better. But we think that 60 is going to be pretty reasonable, relatively speaking. But between 30 and 50, things do get some variation, which is why we flag that as having a low number of responses.
I guess if you threw a confidence band around it, is that the 95% confidence interval? Is it 90?
Yeah, so a confidence interval isn't something that we use specifically because we use non-probability methods. So a confidence interval represents the error that you get by selecting one particular sample compared to if you had surveyed everyone in the town. But it really only applies to probability surveys. And by probability surveys, I mean a survey where you start with a list of addresses or a list of phone numbers and you randomly select from that list. Our methods are different from that. So we don't present a confidence interval or margin of error.
Okay. You've got a couple of statisticians on the committee here, so on the board. So questions from the board, Tom?
So I had two. One you addressed already, which is it'd be helpful for us and maybe for other communities if you listed in the appendix or somewhere what the cohort communities were. Mm-hmm. Because if it's sort of demographically similar or by income, all that matters a lot for us to interpret how we're doing. The other isn't, well, it's sort of a question. I guess I'm not that surprised by the way that we looked for a lot of these responses. I mean, Westford prides itself on community safety and education, so that sort of makes sense. Do you have any resources you provide? I guess the thing that was disappointing, but maybe not surprising, was the ability to interact with town government. Scores seemed low and maybe lower than, if I remember correctly, it was lower than cohort and lower than national.
It was.
Than national. Do you have any? I know this is not necessarily what your business model is, but do you have any best practice information or indications that you've seen from people who are at the high end of the band versus where we are?
Rachel, I can take this one. I think we do actually, it's not necessarily part of our business model, but it is something that our analysts kind of build up as they look at different cities. So we can kind of go through some of the, I'm not sure our specifics on this particular issue, but I'll make sure that like kind of look through all our best practices documents and see what we can send to your team. One thing I did want to frame, because that was one that I had also kind of noted as well. I thought it was interesting, and this is just obviously a guesstimate. I would say in general, just, and this is actually separate from the guesstimate, from the number of calls that Rachel and I do in presentations with other cities, you should feel pretty good. I mean, you're in pretty good shape. We definitely see a lot of cities that are on the way lower end of their bandwidth, way lower end of the national bandwidth, and as well as their cohorts. You should feel good on that. But my guesstimate on something, just sort of my spidey senses went off a little bit, that you guys are getting a lot of really good scores in a lot of very interesting spaces, safety, for instance, the education component, but not necessarily getting credit for it, which I thought was kind of an interesting component. And so whether that's about the way in which you're communicating or the ways in which the city, if you look at the difference in the community aspects for the ones that you should be getting credit for versus the ones that you're not, I just thought that was kind of an interesting, kind of nothing huge there as an insight, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of spidey move.
Just to make sure I understand, so you're saying that you would sort of expect with education scores this high and public safety scores this high, that would reflect an overall higher level of satisfaction than we're seeing. Okay.
Right. You should have gotten more credit for that, was what I was expecting. I would have expected a little bit higher score on services, because so many of those are, if you look at it, it's a lot of the things that connected to the city, right? And the city, Rachel and I go back and forth on this all the time when we're trying to like figure out how to tighten up the questions and see how much can be connected to actual services that are being delivered versus a generalized sense of something. But even within that context, it sure seems like you're not getting the credit that you deserve, given how people feel about things like safety and education and cleanliness of the city, which are particularly, city service related.
And we can also ask Raftellus, because they have worked with other communities that have seen this survey data, so they might have some methodologies or other best practices that we can look into as well related to that.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Any guidance you have about best practice for communication? We're doing a lot, we're working hard at it, but we're not there yet.
I mean, what struck me was your primary outreach was social media, and yet our weakest uptake was those 18 to 34 who are in theory the most active on social media. So that another disconnect. I don't quite get how that happened. I mean, maybe it's all Facebook and they're all.
I would think that's the question I had,
yeah.
was what was the social media outlets that you
Facebook,
utilized?
TikTok, WhatsApp.
Right. So can you guys answer that? What social media did you use to distribute the survey?
Facebook, which is primarily older residents, and Instagram, which does tend to be a little bit younger.
If I have,
yeah, go ahead.
So to build on Tom's question, do you have the ability to tell us if there's a community within the cohort we were compared to that did score high on community engagement with the government?
So the cohort score, again, we didn't go out and survey those communities specifically. There probably isn't enough sample size within each specific town to be able to make those kinds of to try to figure that out, because I can kind of see where you're going, to try to say, okay, is that town doing it better than we are, and what can we learn from them?
That's exactly what I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think that we have the data to do that. The cohort is really to just kind of get a sense of like where are you in the grand scheme of things, and where are you related, in the grand scheme of things, where would we expect a town like Westford to be, and where is Westford actually right now?
Let me rephrase that then. So, I mean, there must be some communities that you've worked with that have scored high on that question.
Yes.
can you share those communities with us, regardless of whether or not they're in our cohort or not, right? You could do that. So we could then reach out to them and say, hey, what are you guys doing that we're not? And maybe get some information from those groups.
We will, we'll talk to our data. There are a series of best practices that we've got, and then I know reps tell us as well, so we will find a way to get a number of things to you to provide as resources.
Okay, my other question was, and I'm going to try and remember the questions. It was something along the lines of how, the percentage of folks that would recommend Westford as a place to live was quite high. And then the question, another follow-up question was, what was the percentage of folks who would stay in Westford in the next 5 years? Right, so how likely are you to be living in Westford 5 years from now? So there seems to be a disconnect there. If you're saying that the overall quality of life is quite high, why would you be leaving 5 years from now? Do you have any insight on why that might
Retirement,
occur?
demographics.
Demographics and age.
It could be. I just want to hear from the pros.
No, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I sort of.
Do you guys have any insight on that?
Yeah, that question is a little bit different from the other quality of life questions, because people leave for all sorts of reasons. We at one point worked with Somerville, which has a very, very high quality of life, but a ton of mobility because a lot of its residents are students.
Yeah.
So while they might be very satisfied with life in Somerville, and they might really like it there, ultimately school is going to end and they're going to leave for a job somewhere. So we keep this in a quality of life, but it is a little bit different, and it needs to be kind of interpreted in a certain kind of way. Does that answer your question?
Well, so I guess, like Andrea was pointing out, maybe this could be tied to people planning on retiring, but I mean, that's an awful large number.
I'm just looking at the percentage of people who were 55 and older who answered this versus, under 55, and so that might skew it towards people are likely to be leaving within the next 5 years.
And,
if they're retiring, they don't have kids in the schools anymore. It's that
or you tie it to the the lack of affordable housing, particularly for over 55, and that's a chronic issue for us as well.
Okay, I guess the question is it a normalized sample? So if we've got only 60 responses of 18 to 34 and 458 of the 55 and over, does your weighting correct for that discrepancy? Or are we, okay, so if we actually are correctly weighting the sample, then the theory that we have about retirement actually is not true.
just went out the window.
No, I think there's. I think this is a great opportunity to dig into the data on the dashboard, where you can actually do a crosstabs to see, what's the age by likelihood of living in Westford in 5 years. You can see that breakdown, and so if you you'll be able to see if older residents are more likely to say that they're going to leave than younger residents.
So we'll pull that out for you by
It'd be
next
also
week.
interesting on the age cohorts about affordability.
Yep, exactly.
Because older ones may have already own their own house, so it's
Probably the youngest are super high. Yeah.
Sorry, Andrea, did you?
I don't really have any questions. Tom and Chris asked my questions, particularly about input into government. Yes, 30%, 37% are satisfied, but 37% aren't satisfied, and that's more than a third of our community, and I think that's a pretty significant number. So as we move forward, I really want to dig into that and find out why, and if there are best practices, if there are things that other communities are doing better than we are, then what can we learn from them? So I think that's really important.
John?
Okay, thanks.
So I guess one last question from me. And I know I've gone space. I wrote it down, but I thought I feel like who's the Secretary of Energy that didn't know the three things you wanted to look up? That's right. Okay, so speaking of Facebook, we had a number of. I don't tend to correspond. I do tend to read it, and I know there were several questions about reliability. So if you respond to the survey once, twice, if you used a Facebook account versus a different account, how good do we feel about weeding out duplicate entries from people?
Yeah, so we use a service called Fingerprint Pro, and what that does is it basically prevents people from taking the survey multiple times using the same device. Fingerprint Pro creates a fingerprint, a digital fingerprint based on not just like the IP address, but also the apps that happen to be on the device, what kind of device it is, all sorts of information. And it provides kind of a unique identifier, just like just a long string of letters and numbers that don't really mean anything. So we don't collect this information, but we do know that we are able to kind of see if there are duplicate responses, and we prevent them from taking the survey a second time.
So would the user know they've been prevented, or would it sort of, it would look to them and they went, like it went, I think in this case, I guess the individual used like 3 different aliases, and literally they all went through. So would they go through or just not get picked up in the final numbers, or would they get some kind of a message, you've already completed the survey, thank you?
They get the message that you've already completed the survey, thank you very much, and then that's it.
Okay, so any questions from the public? Really? Anybody online, Kristen?
Not right now, no.
Okay, so I guess with that we'll say thank you, and stay tuned for
Thank you.
part 2.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Now, next is our 8th item at 7:40, update on Boston Road reconstruction. And Paul's very patiently been waiting for us to get done with surveys to get down to a different kind of surveying.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Starrett, Town Engineer. Here on behalf of what I now know to be 79% of the people who struggle to get around town without a car. And we're looking for opportunities, always looking for opportunities to fix that. And Boston Road will be one of them. And so if I could give you a brief update on the status of the Boston Road reconstruction project. We've been working on this now for 7 years. Which goes back to 2017 when we first submitted our project initiation form with our partners in this project, Mass DOT, who are funding $16 million to complete this work, not including the water, which the water takers will pay for themselves. So as you all may remember, during those 7 years, we leaned heavily on our abutters and local residents, our constituents involved, impacted by the project, which by our calculations is 18,000 people every day commuting on Boston Road. And so now that the project the design is complete, we have made the alterations through the periods of times that we've been in here to talk to you about the project, including removing the one median island near 13 Boston Road, so we could hopefully salvage a tree, a beautiful tree that's historic out on Boston Road. We also looked for opportunities to make safety improvements at Crown Road, the one intersection that people struggle the most to get in and out of. We're going to create a level shelf coming off of Crown Road, so you're no longer, especially if you drive a standard, trying to go uphill out into traffic and merge. We've also significantly increased the sight distance available to operators in both directions, turning onto and coming off of Crown Road. And as you probably perhaps saw in my memo, the request that you had asked for last year about having the bike lanes painted green. Mass DOT unfortunately was not amenable to that request, and they did, after some pushback on behalf of on the part of your town engineer, they did concede to make the green lanes at the most vulnerable places where the intersections are at Crown Road, and especially down at the highway ramps. So they have agreed to provide that initial painting for us. Otherwise, the 18,000, the aforementioned 18,000 people are unfortunately going to be incredibly inconvenienced for what we anticipate the next 2 construction seasons. Largely the first one The contract is being advertised on June 15th, and then we anticipate that over the summer months, the state will select a contractor based on low bid and qualifications. But we anticipate that the approval process, the contracting process, will take us through the bulk of this construction season. So it's unlikely, however possible, that a contractor will mobilize this season. They could get out in the fall if they wanted to get shovels in the ground. However, it's our experience that contractors are, especially a contractor who's going to have an appetite for a $16 million infrastructure project, is going to be busy right up to the end of this year, and we'll be happy to get them in April of next year. That's what we've been telling residents, and I'm telling you now that I anticipate that the big yellow machines will show up in April of next year. But again, it is possible that it could start a little bit earlier than that. We expect that the bulk of the disruptive work will be in the first construction season. We don't direct means or methods to the contractors. It influences their bid prices, so we stay away from that. But we anticipate that they'll come in and put in the water, the deep utility that we have, and then follow that up with the storm water. Much of the project that is much of the objectives of this project will be underground and buried. We'll know that they're there, and we'll know that they're functioning correctly, but then they'll come back the second season, we expect, and start working on other features of the project for completion through punch list in maybe the third season for little items that have to be completed out. So we have made a commitment to our residents, butters in particular, that we will continue to work with them as we have over the past 7 years. We're going to, following this meeting, and then when we get the details from Mass DOT on the contract schedule and the contractor and all the information that we would like to share with our residents, we will get a letter out to the affected areas, working with the IT department to set up a web page. We already have the town's second largest email list, from what I understand, the latest road construction news email that we'll send out when we anticipate that there are going to be road closures or detours put in place. But that's the project in a nutshell. I will tell you, as I have explained to many of the residents, if you've ever had your kitchen remodeled or an addition built onto your house, it's miserable. You know, you have strangers in your home and on your property, and it's loud and noisy, but then it's done. And you're always happy and fascinated and appreciate the hard work that completed it, and that's where we're going to be staring people to think, is it's going to get done, and I'm going to make sure it gets done, and then everybody will be happy. So that's the status of Boston Road. Glad to answer any questions if you have any in particular. Otherwise, I can.
Well, it's one of the two PED safety members here. So I get that we'll have a green bike lane only in certain places when we get done. Does anything prevent DPW from painting it all green after completion?
No. If we're able to find the $400,000, and it's a legacy cost, unfortunately. That, frankly, the DOT did make some safety references about, wet pavement and the paint. I can testify personally that I've had that experience when commuting through Cambridge on my bicycle. It does tend to be an issue, but I think in the end, after this was an $8 million project when we started, and it's 16 now. Some of that is inflation, but we've added a lot to the project. So I think that was part of the pushback, was the cost. But to answer your question, one of the objectives of the project, Boston Road is partially owned by the state. and partially owned by the town, which creates all manner of problems and headaches for both the town and the state. But the objective of getting the state to fund the $16 million to bring this road up to modern standards and in brand-new condition was a commitment from us to bring Boston Road to town meeting for acceptance, and then we'd have the whole length of the road to do whatever you would like to do with it, including the bike lanes, if you would like to do that.
Any questions from the board? Chris?
Paul, do you have a sense for where traffic, this 18,000 vehicles per day, will be going when the road is closed? Do you have some plans?
Yes, so we do, and not to cut your question off, but so we do large intersection projects. This is now the single largest infrastructure improvement project in the history of Westford, not including when they built 495, but the town didn't have a partnership in that. But this project we had 50,000 commuters interrupted when we did Minot's Corner when I first got here, and people just learn. They know on their daily commutes what works best for them. We do work with Google and Waze, who owns Google, to make sure that their road data is up to date each day. We have, in the contract, we've asked for a lane to be open at all times. It's frankly not practical to always be that way, so there is going to be a detour option, and we lean heavily on the Westford Police Department, who has jurisdiction over public safety and commuting questions and issues, so we'll work with them. But there'll be times when you just won't be able to get up and down Boston Road unless you are a resident. Residents will always be able to leave and enter their properties. That, even if we're putting a trench across their driveway, we will stop construction and move a plate across so they can get in or out. And that's a commitment we've made to the residents, and we've done successfully on other projects. But the bulk of your question is answered just by people's common sense and knowledge. They make adjustments and govern themselves accordingly.
And fire and ambulance can always get through?
What's that?
Fire and ambulance, same thing?
Yes, that's the primary reason, knowing that our fire station is at the bottom of the hill and the police station is at the top of the hill. However, clever as those folks are, they have their distributions well thought out. And so they know where they have to be, and they get there, but we will have a lane accessible, especially for fire and police. And we always work closely on any of our infrastructure projects with D-Bus to make sure that our students are getting to and from school, and that uninterrupted as well.
And we'll be working with Solid Waste Hauler as well on pickup for solid waste.
Solid and trash and recycling, we work with them as well, and that's built into the contract. The contractor has to make provisions for them.
John, did you have a hand raised?
You eliminated one of the islands.
Correct.
So how many are left?
We'll still have the one at Crown Road, and I could...
A couple others, weren't there?
I have a lot of projects buzzing through my head at the moment I could fish through, but I think there was another one as well. Okay. There is another one further on Boston Road.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Public? Online? Okay, so...
Wait, yeah, I think...
Okay.
Kristen, you have a couple of comments online.
Oh, in the chat. Okay, thank you. So Heather asks, apology if I missed it, but do the improvements address some of the traffic issues? I know town meeting voted down a light. Is there consideration given to making it one way around the common, not Boston Road one way, or anything that would help prevent the backups?
So we've had multiple studies on the town center, both by the town and by the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. None of those options were ever adopted or taken to the next level. We do anticipate that at some point in the future there will likely have to be some traffic accommodations in the center in particular, but for now That's not a part of this project.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, I guess, thank you for Boston Road, and how about an update on
And if I
Texas
could,
Road?
Mr. Chair, just on all of these projects, but in particular Boston Road, we've been very fortunate in the town of Westford with a very, very low accident rate on our construction sites. I credit the Westford Police Department for that largely. The officers on detail are always very aware of what's going on, and they pay attention. They do an excellent job. However, their lives and the lives of construction workers are always in jeopardy on construction sites. So we're just a gentle appeal to our commuting public. Coming home on a hot summer night after a long day of work, it gets very frustrating, and we know you want to step on the gas. That seems to solve the problems for the driver, but it's just far too dangerous. So we're just reminding people for this construction season and the next, just to take it slow, pay attention to the workers and the police officers in presence, so we can avoid the tragedy that we had earlier this year in Billerica, especially. So that's Boston Road. We have 2 sidewalk projects that we're coming to you by virtue of your policy. We went to the Pedestrian Safety Committee. We met with our friends there and invited abutters to both of the projects at Texas Road and Carlisle Road and Groton Road. And and of course, as you have pointed out, the Pedestrian Safety Committee is well represented here on the Select Board. And you guys will recall that we had a positive response for the most part on both of these sidewalk projects. I'll say briefly on Groton Road, that project was initiated by one of our more adorable Westford residents, a young person with significant mobility challenges. That family came to me last year, and they were in the Pilgrim Lane neighborhood and were trying to get over to the athletic facilities, the tracks in particular, to get some exercise there, but they couldn't get over the curb at Farmer Way. And so we looked at that option. We had talked to Newport Materials, Rick DeFelice, about doing that, and he took it upon himself to install those. And I know I'll get in trouble for mentioning him or his name because he wanted to do it anonymously, but it was that got us started. So we put the ramps, accessible ramps, so this person could get up and down the existing sidewalk there. So this Groton Road sidewalk project will connect Linwood Lane and Pilgrim, so that both of those neighborhoods will be able to access the school and the athletic facilities on the Stony Brook Middle School properties. There's been a tremendous amount of support for that. It's including the abutters who attended the meeting, and we're very much in favor of the project and are looking for opportunities to work with us to make sure that gets done well. I should also mention that the Westford Highway Department will be constructing this in-house. We're getting the materials together now. Town meeting has appropriated the money. Director of Public Works, Kyle Fox, is very excited to get our crews behind this project, and we're looking forward to the work that they're going to do. It's also true, I should mention, at Texas Road and Carlisle Road, the Highway Department has added that project to their workload as well this summer. So those are going to be busy folks getting both of those projects done. Texas and Carlisle was initiated by the Texas Road neighborhood, wanted safer, easier access across Carlisle Road to the Jack Walsh athletic fields there. So we've realigned the driveway to Jack Walsh, as you could see from plans in your packets, to reduce friction with pedestrians crossing there. And we're going to be able to have accessible ramps on both sides and make some adjustments to the drainage there. We hope to be ridden of what the residents call Lake Walsh at the driveway of the Jack Walsh Athletic Facilities. And we anticipate that both of those projects will be completed by the beginning part of November.
Thanks. Any questions from the board? John?
Yeah, on Carlisle Road, people are going by there pretty fast. Do you have any have you improved the warning signs as far as the crossing and the lighting?
Correct, yes. So we've already secured some rapid flashing beacons for this particular location, and we will be implementing our advanced warning signs. The signs are what we're finding to be the most effective, so we will have the blaze yellow signs with pedestrian crossings and arrows to indicate where those are. We're also narrowing up the amount of pavement that pedestrians will have to cross by removing the now sweeping corner at Texas Road. So those will both be safety improvements that I think will make a difference. But as we have told the residents, and I can tell you now, we always monitor our projects after the fact to pay attention to in case there's something that we have to tweak or modify a detail. But we'll pay attention to the signs in particular.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Anything online?
I don't see anything online.
Okay, so thanks, Paul.
Excellent, thank you. Looking
And,
forward to
and,
it.
and please help us with the Bruins next year a little bit
Yes.
farther along. We got one round in. Then next year.
I'm here tonight because they're not in Boston, so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is our 805 item, which is a continuation of the American Rescue Plan funding requests. In particular, reviewing current projects that we've got underway or spent, but more importantly, looking at a new request for AV equipment for the Academy in Abbott to accommodate future town meetings. I'm not sure if it's...
I can start and Dan can give an update as well. So I'll just give an update of this request. Dan can also give an update on where we are in terms of the ARPA account and what our spending schedule is. As you may recall, back in June of 2023, we had a broad sweeping meeting regarding ARPA and really approved a lot of projects that are in the queue or already underway or are finished. This is a one-off based upon the experiences that we've been having with town meeting over the past few months. We would like to equip Westford Academy with 1 or 2 more rooms for two-way communication like we did between the gymnasium and the PAC to include the cafeteria and the auxiliary gym, as well as wire up the Abbott School Gymnasium for further overflow. We had a very successful town meeting in April, but we cannot predict the weather as we had that day. So we want to make sure that if we continue to have a high turnout at town meeting, which is excellent, that's good civic government, that we are prepared to do that over and over again. So we have a request to purchase AV equipment for those town meeting purposes in the amount of $22,407. This is a combination of equipment that WestfordCAT would use for their end to live stream and to communicate both ways, as well as a request from our IT department for additional projector to make sure that the viewing capability is proper. So Dan, will you just give an update on where we are in terms of the account overall and the spending plan?
Sure. So overall, we received $7,417,000 in ARPA funding over a 2-year period. We've appropriated $6,960,000 for 106 different projects. I just did the math. That's about $70,000 per project. So our available balance at this point is just over $457,000. We did have some project closebacks when we did our reporting that was due on April 30th. I worked with Jesse Byer, the town accountant, to reach out to departments and close out any funds that could be made available at that point in time. We're going to continue to do this every month just to make sure that the funds are allocated by December 31st. We want to make sure that there's no project balances out there that can't be used after that fact. So we want to make sure we utilize all of the funding that was made available to us. So as of March 31st, just for the project closeouts at that point, we're able to turn back $152,000. So that's why our balance is higher than what we've seen in the past couple of meetings when we've appropriated ARPA funds.
So one question that comes to mind. So if we do these changes to the infrastructure, I get it affects the video. What about clickers? Because if you get clickers at the Abbott school, they have to have their own receiver, right? Then someone get that back. So is that taken care of already, or will be another funding request to handle that?
So we had really good success borrowing clickers this year. We borrowed from Groton and Uxbridge. We would set up a set of clickers at the Abbott, and it would read that there, and the moderator would receive that information. That would be totally separate from the clickers that would be receiving data at the academy. So the IT department has reviewed that and how the clicker situation would occur.
So there wouldn't be any, would not be electronic feed from Abbott to the academy, just but call the moderator and give her a number?
Well, no, there would be an audio-visual feed, but the
Okay.
clickers would not add up at the academy. So the moderator at Abbott would tally the clickers at Abbott, report that out to town meeting as a whole. It would be added together to the Westford Academy clickers.
Okay. Any other questions? Chris?
So, in the you said the cafeteria was going to be wired up. So these other locations, we have screens already. So how are you going to do the cafeteria screen? Is it going to be just something you're going to put on like an easel, or is it going to be something that drops from the ceiling? How big is it gonna be?
They have, movable projector screens that we could put out there.
Yeah, but those are fairly small compared to what's at the auditorium.
Auditorium, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is that what's in scope, or?
I can ask that question.
Okay.
I don't know that.
Okay. But that's part of this appropriation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Tom?
Just not so much to this, but just for members of the public who are interested in this. So Dan mentioned we've allocated a lot of the money. There's about $400,000 left. We've had a long trajectory of applying the funds to things that are directly impacted by COVID, or have sort of a special characteristic like the inclusivity stuff we just did. So the plan for the money, just confirming Dan, the plan for the money is to make sure we close out by the end of the year, because that's a requirement. And we've sort of earmarked what we think might be a couple $100,000 might be remained, maybe for the healthcare trust. We're going to make decisions again about what we're doing for healthcare, but no matter what we decide, there's likely to be some rollout expense of closing out if we decide to leave the program. So is that still our general arc as we approach the end of the year? Come December, we'll make final call on any remaining funds and where they'll go.
I would say sooner than that would be safer. We need contracts in place by December, so probably by September we're looking like we want to have everything appropriated at that point.
Okay. Thanks.
John?
I have a general question on ARPA. What happened to that $500,000 of overtime that we were tracking for the fire department? We were supposed to be getting something from FEMA, or asking for something for FEMA. Is that $500,000 still earmarked for that?
Yes, it is appropriated. So that closed out the deficit balance from the FEMA grant.
FEMA declined,
Yeah.
so we did fund it out of ARPA.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything from the public? Yeah, sure. Go ahead, come to the microphone.
Come to the mic, please.
Kathy Lynch on Rush Road. Did I hear that you were going to consider having both Westford Academy and Stony Brook for a town meeting at the same time? Is that what I heard?
So it was Westford Academy and Abbott School.
Okay, so that there could be people at both locations voting on things.
Correct.
Anything else? Sure, come on up.
Hi, Christy Bates, 22 Pierce Ave. Because of the two people who read the letters at the beginning of the meeting, I thought I'd bring up that sustainability is a health issue. So, and I know we don't want to use one-time funds, but sometimes one-time funds help you get over a bump, and hopefully you would consider that. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll get there. So I guess is there a motion to
I'll move to approve, where is it?
22,407?
Yeah, $22,407 for the, for acquiring AV equipment for town meetings at Westford Academy and Abbott School.
Second.
All in favor? Great. Thank you. Next, Old new business, thanks, Dan.
Thank you,
I
Dan.
think you're
Thanks, Dan.
free to go
Good
home
night.
now.
Yes.
First, if you, in our packets, we had a recycling commission bug slip for the June tax bill. I guess we need to vote to approve that, or just,
Yes, and if you could just give Mike 1 second to share that he's been working with, I'll share the document if you want to just talk about what you've been working on with the Recycling Commission for this.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. We're actually about a week and a half into the public outreach rollout for all things trash and recycling for the upcoming contract. So at this point, we've created a separate new webpage for the curbside program. You'll know previous to this, we really just had the Recycling Commission information out there with a little bit in there on the trash collection. Now got really a town program site that covers that. So that's been live. We use that to establish the QR code there that we're using in all of our media outreach. That's going to be going, well, we already sent out flyers that have gone out to all of our town locations. We posted them at several dozen public locations and businesses and other public venues around the town. Those went out on Friday. We had a League of Women Voters event last week where we talked a little bit about some of the recycling and trash changes, and then we have those 3 in-person events that you mentioned earlier, Scott, on the calendar, but you didn't mention that the senior luncheon is fried chicken, so that we're hoping is actually going to be, that's going to be the big draw. It's going to get everybody there, is the fried chicken. So, so we've got all of those. We're about I guess about 4 days into pushing things out through social media and news flashes. And then shortly you're going to start seeing up on the town website pop-ups for first-time visitors to the site. We'll get a pop-up notification, click here for more information, changes coming to the program, and it'll redirect them to information about the changes coming to the program. I'm going to be at a senior center event. We've got information going through the senior center newsletter, the library newsletter, really every newsletter that we have access to. We're pushing things out. In the next week, I'll be working with WestfordCAT to do an article through that. And then we've also got a few other publications that are going to be going out, one of which will be the trifold, the normal recycling brochure that you're accustomed to. We've updated that. That's actually being done and paid for by E.O. Harvey under the new contract, so they're in the final stages of getting that draft. We'll share that with you when we have it. And we are anticipating doing a video. Kristen and I, and hopefully a member from E.L. Harvey, will come and do an actual live video with Nick and have that pushed out through the cable access channel and also through our YouTube channels. And the last piece that we're going to be doing are some signs around town. One, we're going to look at using the sandwich boards that the Recycling Commission has, putting those up in some key locations, and also working with Public Works to use the portable message boards sparingly and strategically, and only when they have them for us to use. And we're really letting public safety and DPW drive how those get used. So we will have a limited use of those, and then of course where we have events that we can use those and they're not being otherwise used, we'll be using those portable boards as well at the upcoming electronics recycling event. The last piece that we've got is going to be really dealing with all of our bulk stickers that are already out there and the vendors that sell them. So we're pushing out a letter to the vendors this week and also giving them a flyer that they can post or refer to explain to people, hey, come July 1, it's going to be a new sticker. We're still looking at the colors, but most likely it'll be something yellow. We can't have the green one anymore. We have talked with the clerk and with our finance department about basically if you have a sticker out there already, bring it back in. We'll give you credit for what you paid towards a new sticker. We control all of that anyway, so it's relatively simple for us to do that. So I think we've got pretty much every avenue covered and push an outreach out as much as we can. So hopefully we get some good attendance at the events and everybody's questions get answered.
Thanks. So is there a motion to approve the buck slip?
So moved.
The second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Next, request from the Economic Development Committee to appoint Mike Young as alternate member for a term expiring June 30th, 2025.
Move to appoint.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Request from the Pedestrian Safety Committee to appoint Sean Kelly as the school committee representative for a term expiring June 30th, 2024. Is that
that
true?
right?
Can't be between.
It is because it's a vacant term and then it will be re-up. So there's a vacancy from, I believe there was a school committee member who,
Right.
Lin Quan was, so we will do another reappointment in the month of June.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
but this
so
is to,
moved.
this is to fill that vacancy.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's what I call a short-termer.
Yes, right.
Really?
Request to approve the 2024 annual reappointment for committees and boards as listed in our meeting packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And now for the fun part, the annual town manager performance appraisal. So I thank everybody on the board for giving me their responses in a timely manner. So what I thought I would do is, we didn't do it last year because Krista was so new. Is sort of summarize the findings, and then each member, you all had your comments. Rather than appropriate your comments myself, I'd let you make your own comments here tonight. So on a scale of, so those listening, there are 10 metrics that we take a look at for the town manager, ranging from things like budget, response to emergencies, which we had a number of this year, to more structured things like personal development, relationships to the media and the town, state and local and federal representatives. So these are a market basket of things that we take a look at. In fact, as I've kind of discussed with the board, at some point we want to redo that, because right now every one of those gets an equal weight. And I think we all agree that the budget is probably more important than relations with our state reps, which, while well important, the money is basically zero. So I think we need to think about time spent in terms of the town manager's time. But that being said, if you do the math with 10 items of 5 points, 0 to 5, and so basically 3 is meets expectations, 4 is exceeds, and 5 is substantially exceeds the metric. So the average across the board was 42.3, so above the 4. The range is 37.5 up to 46, so kind of broad. I would just observe, I think, as I took a look at the the items, some of them, like budget, okay, the range is 4.5 to 5. You are exceptionally strong on budget, on handling sort of the unexpected emergencies, or how we phrase that. There were 2 4s and 3 5s, so again, very strong. I think the ones with the most variation were those where I think you could argue about, if you're grading on a report card, is it incomplete only because of timing? So look at, personally looking at asset development, okay, so I think we did a good job with things like, fleet, buildings, there's plans in place to monitor all that. And then that's where we drop in health insurance, which, okay, we have a problem, you can't fix it in 6 months, but it's sort of kind of an incomplete, so it's hard to give a high mark when it's in flux. So I think that may be part of the discrepancy. So there's a couple of categories like that where service to the select board, which when we, or how well you communicate with us, how well you prepare our packets. It takes a while to learn that, right? So the first 6 months of the job, it's how much, how little, how frequent, and now it's okay. Now I know what I'm doing. So again, are you grading that based upon the entire year? Or are you grading that based upon the past 6 months? You get a different score. So I think in most of these, where there's a variation of say 3.5 to 5, it's because of those minor things that tend to work themselves out. So my personal observation is that we brought you on board expecting a certain number of problems. a certain size of a budget hole, and it all got remarkably worse in the space of a few months. And you didn't run screaming from the room. You actually took it on, and some of the ways that were very proactive. You know, I mean, I don't think we've ever done a better job of outreach to the town than we did with this override. Didn't pass, but it wasn't for lack of communication. It was multiple avenues, multiple media, multiple. I mean, it's amazing the hours spent by staff on that. The preparing two budgets. I don't think we've ever prepared two full budgets before. So a lot of really creative things were done that had to be done, but if they weren't done, it would have been, you know, an even worse situation than it was. So, you know, I was in the middle of the pack. I think I was the 43.5 was me. So, so that's the brief. So, you know, exceptionally good job. Thank you for the work. I know one of the things I was impressed with was, again, maybe it's incomplete, but staffing. So, you know, most important thing you can do besides making sure we stay fiscally solvent is make sure that the staff we have is, of course, competent, but also really friendly with the town, open to the town. And when I talked to Ref Tellis, one of my comments was, you know, they asked about worries. Well, of course, we're worried about the money. We're also worried about, we're a town of 25,000 people that's used to being treated like a town of 5,000. That's really, really, really hard to pull off, and in fact, maybe impossible as we look forward. But how close can we come to maintaining that? And the people you've hired so far have been in that frame of running this thing like it's a personal business as opposed to a $120 million company. So, so again, thank you for that. Of course, we got more time to go to hire more staff, but and also just being proactive. It's never fun to lay staff off, and knowing in January there's a problem coming, putting a hiring freeze in place. I call that staffing because it's a sort of loss prevention, and so that meant that on the town side we could limit our exposure to a failed override, which, you know, we now have to enact, but it minimizes the pain to the employees. So with that, I don't know, Tom, if you want to.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity to follow Scott, just because I had such a great year working with you as chair. I think the thing that stands out to me most is in the extraordinary level of difficulty that Scott mentioned. You were really extraordinarily resilient. So as chair, I got to be like with you maybe first when some of the bad news happened or things didn't go like we thought, and your reaction was, you know, let's absorb it and let's figure out how we're going to handle it and how we're going to move on. And I don't know, I mean, if you look at all the town managers in the world, in your first year to hit as many challenges as we had, it's just a really extraordinary level of difficulty. So I think you did that really well. And a little case study that I'll remember is how we migrated through really pretty disastrous town meeting experience to a really, really excellent one. And that, the reason I'll remember that is that's not, it's a lot of you, but not just you, it was the whole team really stood up and said, I'm going to do everything I can to make this an excellent experience. I'm going to go above and beyond. And, you know, I got to stand with you during your, like, you know, circle brief, you know, as we were getting ready for the final approach to the meeting. And just, you could tell that the team was with you. And that, I don't know, I thought that was pretty exciting, and I thought you did that particularly well. So.
Thank you.
So I had the pleasure of being on the town manager, you know, selection committee, and when you came before us, it was just like, all right, we found our candidate, and we were lucky to bring you on board. And I think you have proven time and time again that that was just a great decision by the board at the time. And the town people of Westford are, you know, very lucky and grateful to have you. As my colleagues have pointed out, it's been an incredibly difficult year. So many different challenges, whether it's the budget or staffing or, you know, any number of other issues that have come across your desk. You've really handled them very well. I appreciate how you keep the board informed. You go out of your way to do that, and I think that's great. It makes us more effective, and I think as a team we've been working very well together because of that outreach that you do. And I know, like we were talking today, when you have an issue, you got to make five phone calls, and you're a busy person, and that's challenging, but you make it work. And I do want to say that from a staffing perspective, you have faced a number of challenges, and, I've been impressed with the people that you've brought on board, and I think that's a sign of a good manager when they can bring on people that are really competent and doing well, and I'm looking forward to, making sure that we continue to keep our, employees happy and effective, and I think you're the right leader for that. So I'm really excited to see what happens in the next year. Hopefully, not as many ups and downs as this one. You deserve a break, but I know we're in good hands. So thank you for all your hard work.
Well, I chaired that committee.
I know you did. Yes, you did. You did an awesome job, too.
And I agree with you. We definitely made the right decision when it came down to it. I echo. None of us could have imagined what you were going to face. In our worst case scenarios. None of us could imagine what you were going to face, and you were like the ever-ready bunny. You just kept going. Okay, yep, here we go. I'm just going forward. Here we go. Nope, not turning over here. Keep going forward. And also, you also, in addition to doing all of this, took the time to also manage yourself and your professionalism, and took the certification course at Suffolk, which I think also probably helped you manage all of this as well. But that's on top of managing our town. And oh, by the way, she has a family with
Right.
2 kids. But yes, I think you've certainly First of all, I'm so grateful you're coming back for a second year after what you went through the first year. So I appreciate that. I think there were some learning bumps and some curves along the way, and you and I talked about them during the year, and I always appreciated that your door was always open and continues to be opened, and you heard what I was saying, and also are confident enough to push back on me when you don't agree with me, which I also appreciate. So, I think you came through this year, and like Chris said, I'm looking forward to the next years ahead. Looking forward to the new staff that you hired, and sort of the realignment that you've done in town hall, and hopefully I know we have challenges in fiscal year 26, but hopefully just a little bit smoother than we've had. And also, I think it also bears mentioning that there were some serious employment issues that you had to deal with when you got here as well. That also sort of impacted your first months here as well, and that had to be managed, that you did manage and dealt with. So that also, I think, needs to be mentioned.
Right.
Last but not least.
Last but not least. Yeah, well, I agree with what everybody else said. When you first came on board, I was a little bit concerned about experience in contracting and facilities, and you picked up on that very quickly, and you've moved great, made good steps forward in that. I think your positive attitude in the job has been exemplary. Your work on the budget, a challenge that I don't know who could have done any better than you did. But working the budget, and then what you did at the annual town meeting, presenting the budget, answering the questions to the town, getting the information out in great detail. So you more than met expectations in almost every category, and exemplary in these 2 of them. And then your ability to handle emergencies, change direction. And so I thought that was really good. So I think you did a great job for a first 1.5 year town manager, and I appreciate that. So just like to echo what everybody else said. Nice work.
The only other observation would be that we have to have Audrey in future parades because she outshines the select board running back and forth with the candy. So.
She and Angelina.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, I think we should just put them in charge, the 2 of them, the candy, and
It'd be great.
Yeah,
Yep.
most people at Westford think they're on staff.
It's true.
But on a more serious note, normally we always ask the town manager to give us her accomplishments, and in my time frame it's always been a her, and that's what we get. With Chris, it actually came in 3 pieces. One was the traditional accomplishments. One was the work in progress, which there's always works in progress, but first year and a half especially, but in 10 years, there's still works in progress. Most importantly, that I've never seen before, of course, I've only been through two town managers, but here's my plans for self-improvement. Heck, I've had employees work for me before in the private sector. Never seen someone say, hey, here's what I need to work on, how I'm going to get better. So I really appreciate the fact that the self-evaluation was done by yourself before you even came to us to say, I know that there's A, B, and C that can get better, and here we go. And of course, that'll always be the case, because once those are fixed, there's always future improvement. So, thank you very much for your service, and look forward to here. So just housekeeping. Normally, what the board does is meets executive session, and we talk about compensation, and we arrive at that as sort of a review amongst ourselves, and then we have the public discussion we're having now. At Kristen's request, we're actually changing that around, so we're doing the review now, and at a future meeting, we'll have the executive session to come up with the comp plan, which with this budget will not be very generous, but it'll be something. So, so thanks.
May I say
Yes.
a few words? So first of all, thank you all for taking the time to perform the evaluation. I know it's difficult. I know it's a public setting. And also thank you all for your support over the past 15 months. I could not have done it without you all and your guidance and history with the town, but also really want to thank all of the staff, past and present, because I would not be in this seat without them. The staff that was set up in advance of me coming here, as well as the staff we brought on board, makes this all possible, right? We all work as a team. I've tried to broaden that team, broaden the lens, making sure people are involved. So I just want to make sure that everyone of my team knows how much I appreciate them, how much they have worked this year. They have worked many more hours than probably they ever had as well. So I can't do this alone. I'm happy to lead the team. I'm proud to lead and manage the team, but they also deserve a lot of the credit as well.
It's all denouement now.
It's sort of anticlimactic to do anything else.
Really?
But
We have to.
There still may be a couple of bumps ahead, too.
oh yes,
Absolutely.
although as a forecaster, I've learned basically not to try forecasting that, so it's just pointless. So yes, next is discuss the annual strategic planning and retreat, which we probably should clarify. It was out of the budget, in the budget. That as well as the format.
Sure. So the town of Westford is accustomed to having an annual strategic retreat either in June or September. Last year it was in September, and we have specific topic areas in the past. This year there is no budget for an annual strategic retreat. It was taken out of both the override and no override budgets. However, we've secured funding through the state, through our community compact, for public outreach associated with our strategic planning process. And we've been talking a lot this evening about strategic planning. So what I wanted to have a brief conversation with the board about is having an annual strategic planning retreat, but not having individual topics like you've had in the past, having it be part of the strategic plan. So you're meeting with Raftelis next week. Our staff is also meeting with them. I feel like we'll have a lot more data and input to provide to residents come a September timeframe. So I wanted to discuss with the board this evening of having a more targeted, traditional, non-traditional to Westford strategic planning retreat to present some of the findings of the strategic plan, massage that out in effort to finalize that strategic plan in October timeframe.
Does it involve ice cream?
It may. We have not contacted any venues yet, but we can certainly see if it involves ice cream. I think that would bring people out for sure.
Always does.
Yes.
Food is always
It
great.
will involve food for sure.
Maybe it should be fried chicken. I don't know, but
That one's taken.
okay. I guess my observation would be what I've disliked about the past venue, apart from the great fruit and ice cream, has been the difficulty to hear a speaker because the acoustics are so bad. And what ends up happening is you can't hear, so you talk to your neighbor, which just makes it even more difficult to hear. And frankly, after the first half hour, it's babble. So whatever we do for a venue, we need to work on that ability to have a good PA system and have people pay attention. Anything else,
You know,
Tom?
I'm wondering, in light of the AV equipment that we're spending money on and having the availability of using, you know, Westford Academy, you know, the gym, the PCA, the cafeteria, and even Abbott, and I don't think we need all those based on the numbers that we've gotten at past retreats. If we could do something indoors there, we could bring the ice cream, well, maybe we won't use the cafeteria because we'll bring the ice cream in to the cafeteria where they can serve it, but maybe doing something like that, because that will certainly deal with the audio issues that we've always had. And it would be, if we were making presentations, if you've got the screens there, it's easier for people to see, so just a thought.
Well, actually, that's a really good point, too, because what I've observed at past retreats is the same 200 people, roughly, give or take, every year. And if you think back to the Zen City presentation, about 37% of our people don't think they can get hold of government. The retreat is a great way to break that. What actually has been happening over the past is the very same people who've got great access to government are the ones who show up. So, yeah, how do we create a venue and also a communication system to get those who, you know, have not historically been part of this process to get involved?
Yeah, so I think we should definitely do it. I think we may get more turnout or slightly different turnout than we've had in the past. And I think the tricky thing will be to say this is an important time for us to decide where our priorities are and what's most critical and what our identity is as a town in the face of these really difficult budget choices. Like, we're not going to be able to dissociate our brain from like the very difficult budgeting environment that's coming, and then the importance of setting our priorities, because the limited dollars we're going to have, we need to make sure we're directing them towards what people care about most. So I think we should definitely do it, and I think it'll be great. It'll be like a thoughtful exercise to get the tone right, given what's going to be at stake in terms of choices in the coming year.
I'll say that from past experience, when we did the recreation master plan, we had 2 public input sessions, both held at the cafeteria at Westford Academy. 120, I think, on the first one, slightly less on the second one, and it worked very, very well from a audiovisual perspective. We had small group breakouts, but that we don't have to follow that format here. But it would also accommodate ice cream, right? Which I think is important.
Back to number 1.
Or cupcakes, whatever you want to do. You know.
Yep.
John wants corn pone or something from North Carolina.
Ice cream in October outside, that's all that.
Okay.
Pumpkin spice something.
Anything to add, John? I don't want to.
I don't think so. I mean, you covered it, I think, pretty well.
All right, so we'll take that feedback back to our team and start to develop a plan and bring it back to you for consideration.
Okay.
And next, with all humility, a request to authorize the Select Board Chair to sign on behalf of the Select Board to submit a district compliance application for the MBTA communities to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for compliance with Section 3A of the Zoning Act.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was quick. Okay, that was easy. Next, minutes for approval and for release, regular sessions of March 23rd, 2024, and April 27th of 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, but I have to abstain from March 23rd because I wasn't here.
Okay, so 401 on March, and then 501 April. Are there any boards?
Wait, no, it was the opposite. I'm sorry, I was here for the 23rd. I wasn't here for the April 27th.
Right. That was they were both the
They're both
town
right.
meetings,
No, it
but
was the April one I wasn't here for, so the opposite. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any board reports or updates? Not appearing. We move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you. Let me just bring up a memo. So the first item under the town manager's report is to authorize us to submit a grant to the Community One Stop program. So in the past, this was MassWorks, it was other state grants. They've combined it all into one. This year, we'd like to make 3 requests to the Community One Stop program. One is a Route 40 corridor study. ask. That was a resolution at town meeting in March of 2023. MBTA Communities Overlay District Pedestrian Plan and an Open Space and Recreation Plan update. Our Open Space and Recreation Plan is valid through 2025. So in all, the Route 40 corridor study, we are anticipating a $65,000 ask for that. The MBTA Communities Pedestrian Infrastructure Plan, anticipating $150,000 through the Housing Choice Grant Program, and the Open Space Plan anticipating $65,000 through the Community Planning Grant Assistance. The Land Use Department did shop these projects with the state, as they do allow us to pre-submit and get feedback. We pre-submitted 5 projects. These 3 came back more favorable. So that application is due on June 5th, so we would ask the board to authorize me to submit that application.
So moved.
Sorry, thank you. The pedestrian one, is that, could that be amended to be pedestrian and bicycle accommodations?
So it's pedestrian and infrastructure, so I believe that infrastructure counts bicycle.
Okay.
I will double check that with the land use department.
Yes, thank
Yep.
you. I mean, sidewalks would be great, but I think
Yep.
bike lanes might work also in some of those areas.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, so buckle up for purchase orders. This is due to us starting a new fiscal year and getting those purchase orders ready. The first few are for this fiscal year, just to close out projects, and then the remaining are for next fiscal year. Would you like me to read through every one that we have, or are there anything that you want to call out with questions?
No.
No questions.
Yeah, normally I would say, for the sake of the public, to read them out. When I see things that go up to like 15, I think we could forgo that. Anyways, it's in the agenda published anyway, so. Is there a motion to approve the purchase orders
So moved.
as outlined in our
As
agenda?
outlined in the agenda of May 28th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Someone wants to get you out of here early so I get extra credit.
I'll move, to help you out, I'll move to waive reading of correspondence.
I still have contracts before we do that.
Oops, my bad.
No worries at all. I will read these because there's one very specific one that I think you should vote on separately. So first is Olson Company for construction services for the Town Farm water storage tank repairs in the amount of $121,000 by the Water Department. Ty and Bond for professional engineering services for the Stony Brook School wastewater treatment facility painting project in the amount of $50,000 by the Water Department. Tecton Architects for the space planning and capital needs assessment in an amount not to exceed $169,000. Want to note that we have $144,000 of that coming out of the ARPA allocation. We also have some coming out of the ADA allocation that we received a grant from, so we were able to negotiate those 2 projects to allow for a higher amount for Tecton. I'll take the next item last. The next one is TEC for construction phasing services for the Boston Road reconstruction project in the amount of $90,000 by the engineering department, and Solitude Lake Management for lake management services in the amount of $76,550,000 by the Conservation Resources Planner. I ask that you take the police chief contract separate.
So I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
And then final contract is a police chief, Mark Chambers employment agreement for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th of 2027.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, before we waive for the correspondence, so there is a lot of correspondence in our packet. There's a couple of speakers tonight on, or from the public on, the sustainability position. It's not on the agenda tonight, so therefore we can't discuss it tonight. If the board has a desire to bring this up at a future meeting, we can put it on the agenda.
I have a related agenda request, which is, I know Kristen's working on sort of thinking again how the work, all the sustainability, climate action work that the town is responsible for might be handled in the future, to be responsible, how the work might be organized in terms of a process. I'm just really excited to hear what she lands on. And also, I'd love to hear some goals restated. I don't feel like we've, maybe, and, you know, I'm partly responsible. I don't think we've been as goal-driven, like, we have these specific goals, we're tracking how we're doing against them. So it's a general request, I guess, both for the methods, but also a restatement, or maybe just a discussion about what our climate action goals are for the next 12 months. Because I would love to have something in some body we can hold responsible to invite back, hold accountable through the course of a year, and end up feeling like we've really made progress on this really important set of issues.
Andrea?
And I was just going to say, you know, given the amount of correspondence that we've had and the comments that we heard here tonight, I actually, and given the fact that only 37% of our residents think that we listen to them and take their input, I think we need to put it on our agenda and have a discussion about it. And I agree with you, Tom. Let's not just about the position itself, but where the next, what's going to happen to it, who's going to take responsibility, what the goals are, what the priorities are, who's going to be held accountable. Try and answer the concerns of the CEASC and the climate action control folks, and address their issues. So I actually think we do need to put this on the agenda.
I guess the question is, there is an incumbent in that role, which we may or may not be able to do something about, but is June 11th too fast to get something to us, or would June 25th be realistic? July 1st is a magic date for staff. When would we want to schedule this so we can get the right information to make decisions?
So I know that Mike has been working with Sue Thomas, who's currently in the sustainability coordinator role since before May 7th, really, but in earnest since May 7th, to understand the duties that have been done by her, what has been done in the past by the previous assistant town manager, the facilities director, the DPW projects. So I think you probably have a better handle on what that is in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think we're still in a process now. We're trying to inventory what all the activities are that Sue's been responsible for, and really determine which of those are mission critical, try to assign some preliminary priorities. But Tom, like you said, having some priority guidance on where we want to be for the next year would help us do some of that. But I think by and large, we've got at least another week of trying to figure out exactly where we are with what activities are underway right now, which one of them are actually geared towards one of those priorities, and have to continue. Identifying active contracts, identifying active grants and active obligations of the town. Those are the priority activities, and trying to figure out where those would get reassigned to, because those will be reassigned. They have to be reassigned, but then we have several other buckets of activities that we'll have to figure out, do they continue? If so, where do they continue, and what is the priority? And that will help us to figure out where those things need to land eventually.
I guess thinking also, as you go through, ideally, a plan. I know you're talking to members of the CSEC already, so they're already part of that process.
Yes.
Would it be helpful or not to have a member of the select board in some of these discussions so that we have one person who's up to speed completely when it comes to us?
In terms of the tasks and how those are prioritized or
Yeah.
continued forward, I'd prefer to see what we have first before I answer that. But I would like sooner rather than later a sense of the board. We did not fund this in the non-override budget. I don't have capacity right now as the budget as I know it to fund this position right now. We have an employee who I guess may be in limbo or not, but based upon the town meeting vote, their position is not funded as of July 1st. So as certainty as we can get, the sooner the better. I think that would be important.
If you need a member for the board, I'll volunteer Tom. So.
Or John, who's been close to it already.
That's true, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Spend a lot of time.
So I think it's a good idea for us to discuss this and honor the requests that we have from people. My general thinking, though, just for what it's worth, is that we're approaching an environment of even more scarce resources. And so I think it's really productive. What I'm hoping to get out of this discussion is we do care about climate. It is a priority. Here are the goals we feel we can sign up for here's how we're going to do that and how we're going to be accountable to it. I think the idea of adding new resources anywhere right now where we're moving into a budget year where if things remain similar in their climate, we're going to be looking at 80 to 100 layoffs, big service reductions. I guess if you said that you needed guidance sooner than when we get to this point about what this position means, I'm very interested and committed to the climate action for the town and want to know how we're going to do that. I think we're going to have to be really good at using the smaller set of resources that we're going to have in the future in a disciplined way. That's more what I'm thinking than entertaining the idea of outside of the budget process adding anything new in now. I'd be happy to answer questions when the time comes. I'm not really thinking about that when I'm thinking about the agenda item I asked for, if that's helpful at all.
Yeah.
So,
I think I understand what you're saying.
I guess what I would suggest, if you folks can meet it, is that we put it on our June 11th agenda, at least to start the discussion. Even if we can't finish the discussion and we have questions or follow-up questions for you folks, then you can come back at our second meeting in June. But I think we should start that discussion at our next meeting.
So here are two separate discussions, right? The prioritization of the sustainability of Westford and the tasks that we do versus a sustainability coordinator position that is not funded in the budget. I want to be crystal clear with what the board's expectations are for future conversations.
Okay, so I because it's not on the agenda, I didn't really want to get too much into the weeds here. My own philosophy is much like Tom's, that we laid out to the town the consequences of an override failing, and this is that consequence. I'm not sure we do anybody any favors to backtrack on that if we're in a similar hole next year. But does this mean if there's grant funding out there someplace that we can find? I'm not saying I don't want to use tax dollars per se, but if there's other ways to make it happen, that's worth knowing.
That's how it got started. We had a grant and then we used ARPA funds too, didn't we?
I guess I just want to ask feedback for you. So is that enough clarity for you? You're running this show and you've got people involved and you want to be clear with them. Is it clear? And I think maybe you have a feeling, but we want to respect the fact that we're going to put it on an agenda. Is that okay for tonight, or do you feel like, look, we're right up against this thing, we need something more concrete than that, I guess?
No, I think I understand where the board's position is on this, and I think there's two matters that we will take care of and present to you on the 11th.
Okay, as long as you feel like you're getting a fair support from us and what you need.
No, I think I understand where the board is.
Okay.
Yep.
With that, is there a motion to waive remaining correspondence?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.